Lead and Empower Her with Dr. Julie Ducharme, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they have learned on their road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their success into your life and business. Lead and Empower Her with Dr. Julie Ducharme is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Dr. Julie Ducharme.
Hi, I'm Dr. Julie Ducharme, back for another episode of She CEO Talks. So excited. I love this podcast because I get to talk to women around the world in different industries with such amazing stories, but also amazing connectivity between what they're doing, their struggles, their wins, and their successes. So today I'm really excited to have Courtney Martin on the show with us. Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Courtney has been a successful person, a successful woman in sales for over 16 years in the medical industry. And now she is transitioning into her CEO position with her new company. She has a title of mindset coach, a new course that is coming out. She's also a published author, and she's now in a position where she's really giving back from her experiences. She's now going back to that next generation coming through and trying to help them have a better start and more success. And so we're going to talk a lot about that today. So Courtney, really excited to have you on the show. And I'd love for you to tell our listeners a little bit of the backstory. Like, you were in sales, what, highs, lows, why did you transition to this?
Sure. So I was right out of college. I became a pharmaceutical rep, and at the age of 22, and it was, a great job. I mean, company car, my laptop, an expense account, benefits, a full package. And I loved it. And I worked as a pharmaceutical rep for 4 years, and, won trips and awards, and, sales just came naturally to me, and I loved it. And then, the company had a massive layoff. And so I was laid off, and took me a few months, but I was in the disease state cardiology, and I really loved talking about it and learning about it. So I found another job selling heart monitors, where I remained for 12 years, actually. And again, I loved it. And I did well, won President's Club, which is, the top 10 in the company, trips, awards, and was super successful. And then I had a family, but no, it wasn't because of my family, but it, as a working mom, it very much shifted my focus, and it was I no longer wanted to put in, after hours and overtime, in my career. I wanted to be at home with the kids, and I found the work life, family life balance was, it was very hard, and it was a struggle. And because of that, I saw my numbers go down. I was not at the top anymore. I stopped winning awards. I stopped winning trips. I stopped getting the sales recognition and the bonuses. And it did something to my mindset, to where on the bottom, and seeing my name at the bottom, I didn't have that same fire and passion and drive anymore. It really took the wind out of my sales. And, I understand my priorities had focused, like a lot of working women's, it just does. But I never could kind of get back to the rep I once was. And I struggled for years. And, I had babies at home. I had like a baby and toddler. My kids are 2 years apart. And this super competitive, demanding sales job, where performance is everything. If you're not hitting your numbers, you're not getting paid. And you do that on a consistent basis, and, your job's on the line. And then at home, it's chaos for anyone who has, younger children. It's fun chaos, but it's chaos. So I was just spread really thin, and I just was feeling like I wasn't enough at work or at home, because I, was, when I was at home, I was thinking about how bad I was doing at work. And when I was at work, I was thinking, I wish I could be with my kids. I was feeling that mom guilt. So, that imbalance after a while, it got to me, and I just struggled with extreme burnout, until the point where I just I told my husband, I said, I have to quit because this is way too much for me to handle. And I found that, when you're struggling at work, it permeates into your home life. And I didn't feel like I was showing up for my family, and they were my priority. So, I quit, and I thought, okay, this is going to be the answer to my problems, so as a stay-at-home mom for a little bit. And then there was just something in me that I wanted to keep going, but I didn't know what it was. And all I felt was I had something more to give. And it took me a while to figure that out. And what kept kind of haunting me was the thought that I had failed at my job, and not in a sense that my numbers or I was about to get fired. I had failed because I had allowed my mindset to get the best of me to where I had to stop. And it was that failure that I wanted to figure out why I had it, and why, there are other people, my other good friends and colleagues were still at the top of sales rankings and doing so well and having the success, even working moms. How are they able to do it? And I wasn't. And so, I just kind of started researching it and looking into it. And I did a lot of reading about neuroscience and psychology. And it's kind of like, we were talking the other day, I compared it to athletes, and really, professional athletes and even celebrities, where their mindset is everything. They can have the same skill sets, but the athlete with the better, stronger mindset is going to be the one who succeeds long term. And that is very much parallel to sales. And so I figured out the reason I had burnout is because of the imbalance of the highs and lows. And so this sales course is all about giving salespeople the tools to have sustained long-term success, so they don't have that imbalance, and they don't get burned out, and they can actually enjoy their job, have financial success and fulfillment at home and in their career.
And, a lot of things you said, something I experienced very much when I moved into a very high level job. I had 2 kids, just like you. They're about 2 years apart. And when you talk about those wants, which I think is unique for women, because obviously we are the ones carrying them in our belly. We have this maternal instinct. And I, like you, was a very competitive woman who very much wanted to be in business and have a career, and thought, I can have a career and have kids and be a good mom. And I experienced very much the similar things you did, right? Of just like, I'm not being a good mom because, I'm not there enough, or, oh my God, I missed my kids' play because I had to go to this thing. And I felt very much like I was having to decide between my family and my job, which is interesting because typically men don't. Now, let me just say, like, I love men. I'm not a feminist. I'm like all about my male colleagues, but culturally, guys don't have that maternal instinct like we do. They are not stressing about being home with their kids.
No,
I don't think they love their kids, but they're like, I'm totally cool being at work.
Yes.
And so when you talk about mindset, I think that's something that as women, we really have to overcome. Pardon me. And maybe not necessarily overcome, but understand, like you said, how do we do both, right? How do I be a good mom and also do my passion, right? Because you mentioned you felt something was missing, right? And that's what the feminine mystique was all about in the 70s that Betty Friedman wrote about. It was like women went to college and they became educated, but then culturally they were supposed to get married and go home and do the family thing, but they were at home and they were getting depressed because they were like, there's something more, right? I'm more than just a mom, just a cleaner, just a diaper teacher, right? And so I think for women culturally, this is something that's gone on for a long time, right? Culturally, I think the expectation was you pick one or the other. People would say to me like, so how does your husband feel about you working such a big job with having kids? Like things like that would be said to me. And I'd be like, what do you mean? How does he feel? Like, or really, are you really a good mom if you're giving your kids formula and not breastfeeding because you're going to work? Right. And I'd be like, my kids are going to be totally fine with formula. Right. because I had to figure that out. Back in the day when I was having my kids, there was no place to breastfeed at my work. And it was very much
It's so
expected.
nice now, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
now it's
Now
there's
it's
so much
great.
accommodating.
But
Yeah.
I was like, do I go into my car or a dirty bathroom stall? So I chose to give my kids formula because I was like, I have to get back to work. Like I have to get back to work and I can't be breast pumping and all this stuff. So that's something that I chose that I very much got a lot. Not like it's anyone's
Right.
but those are things I struggled with. And so I appreciate you sharing that because I know you're not the only one and I'm not the only one, and now today versus, my daughter's almost 15, and my son's 12. So if we go back 15 years, which is not that long, but it really wasn't accepted in the workplace. Now I see CEO women coming in with their kids, pack and plays in their office,
Yeah.
breastfeeding while they're sitting at their desk. And I'm like, that's amazing. But
Yeah.
not all of us have that luxury, right? I mean, not some people that are listening today may just be starting in sales, right? And they're like, Courtney, I have 2 kids. I'm starting in sales. Like, how do I do this? You know?
Well, yeah, and there's two things actually that you said that I want to touch on out of experience. Now that hindsight's, always 2020, obviously. Um, Two things I wish I would have known. Now I know I'm a working mom again, but when I was having the extreme mom guilt, two things I didn't realize. One was my kids are watching me. My
Mhm.
kids are watching me be the breadwinner. My kids are watching me show up, for their, class plays or eat lunch with them. They saw me leading presentations. They saw me, doing household chores, caring for them or whatever. What I missed was they saw me as more than I saw myself.
Mm.
And, I think it's important that, no matter, I mean, gosh, even 3-year-olds, they pick up on more than we realize. And they idolize their moms, especially period, whether they're stay at home or they have a job, but especially if they're juggling both,
Mhm.
that is setting such a huge example, especially for your if you have a daughter and son, but especially my daughter, where I felt I was failing because I wasn't able to be there at every second for her, and she was had daycare sitters. She saw, wow, like look at what my mom's doing. My mom's incredible. She's able to do all these things and be a mom. And I miss that. So I think that as a working mom of young kids, I think that we need to give ourselves more credit and understand that we're actually paving the way for our children and setting a really good example. Like if you don't want to stay at home and be a homemaker, that's okay. You can do both. You can create a job where you can have both, or, do something totally different. And that's something I wish I would have understood, rather than, feeling like I was always a failure. The second thing is quantity versus quality. And I didn't realize this, until I quit my job and was staying at home, but it's the quality and not the quantity. We can spend 24 hours with our children. Does that mean it's going to be quality 24 hours? No, it's just the stay-at-home moms. Guess what? They're not doing puzzles and playing hide and go seek and, engaged every second of every day. They're cleaning the house. They're going to the grocery store. They're doing other things. So I think a lot of times us, when we're working and we're away from our families, we think, oh my gosh, if I were home, I would be, actively, engaged and playing and all this stuff. And that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's not the amount of hours you spend around our children. It's the amount, it's the quality that we're able to provide when we are with them. And that's what they care about. They don't care about a mom who's simply there, but not paying attention to them. They're going to remember, the time, the active time spent with them. So
Yeah.
the quantity versus quality is something that I wish I would have thought about.
Yeah, I fully agree. And like I said, I think we kind of do it to ourselves. I mean, culturally, obviously, and I really don't think culture's intention was bad in expecting women to handle this. I think that culturally, maternally, I think we're better at it than men, right?
Yeah.
And nothing against our male counterparts. I love my husband, but there's just some things that he's not great at, and that's totally okay, and vice versa. And I think that's the thing as women that we have to remember too, is that it's okay to not be good at everything, right? And like I said,
Yeah.
kids are really, they're so resilient, right? Like the things we're stressing over, you'll find out later that they're like, I don't even remember that, and I don't even care. My son is 12 and he is in the very much don't care phase of his life. Like he's like, I don't want to put deodorant on. I don't want to wear a shirt. I don't want to change my clothes. I don't want to shower. Like I don't. And I'm like, don't you care that you'd be the stinky kid? And he's like, no. And I was thinking about that for a moment. I was like, oh my God, if we could just not, right? Like not, I mean, I like to shower and put on deodorant, but to just have that mentality of like, he's so free and he's not burdened down by any of those, like, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not, he's just like, I'll try this. I'll try this, and I'm like, God, I love that, because we're so like, oh, I didn't make that, like I always joke about the Pinterest moms, and God bless the Pinterest moms, but I'm not one of them, right? Where they make these like really amazing things.
Yeah.
Their lunches look like these, and I'm always just like sandwich, chips, and some cookies. And, the parents like, oh, you gave your kid cookies. I'm like, heck yeah, I gave my kid cookies. That was easy. They're going to eat their, and so,
Not going to throw them
yeah.
away.
And I grew up with a very practical mother, grandparents from the South, like everything was very practical. And so but that's the thing, like you said, I mean, I think as we're all working towards this, right? And I'm going to have to obviously share my book with you. It's about my journey, similar to yours, but of course, 15 years ago. And all of those things, right? And the transition, right? You said you felt like you failed at your job, right? But you felt like you were failing as a mother. Same thing, right? I'm transitioning out of this big job and I'm like, everyone's going to think I'm a failure. Nobody cared. But in my mind, everyone was going to say, oh, look at Julie. She's a failure, right? And so I built these things up in my mind. And then as you said, and let's maybe transition talking about that mindset. I had this day where I had to, like, I told my husband like this, I just need you to take off the day. I need you to take the kids. Like I need a day to get my mind together, right? And so I had to shift my mindset to fully believe, and being a former high level athlete, as you talked about, believe that I could transition into a different part of my life and still be successful and still be good at it. And that I was struggling with understanding that I wasn't a one-trick pony and that I could move into those industries. And so for me, like what you're doing, that I want to talk about next, is that mindset. Now, I went back to my sports mentality mindset, which is what's driven me over the last 15 years.
Absolutely.
But I kind of got lost in that for a bit. And as you mentioned those things, I'd like to talk about, you have a class coming out and a book, and we're not going to give away too much information because you're going to do official launches on those. But let's talk about your class a little bit and the mindset, because I know it's called the winning mindset of sales. Of course, this sounds like this probably could apply to many other people in the industry, but I know you're focusing on sales right now. And obviously don't give away too many secrets of it, but maybe you could get a few examples of how you help people with their mindset in that.
Yeah. So, when I was in sales, it was like, I felt like I was beating my head against the wall. Nothing was working. No matter how hard I tried, no matter what I did, no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't either retain customers or get new customers. It just felt really hard all of a sudden. And fast forward, I've now realized, it was me that was in my way. But at the time, I was blaming my company, my customers, my upper management, my products. But I looked around me and I went, how come there are this group of people that are able to hit and surpass their goals every month, every year, consistently? How we have the same products, we have the same product knowledge, we have the same training, we have the same management. We're both self-motivated individuals. We're in paid for performance sales. What's the difference? And so that's why, I researched it and figured it out. It's all about our mindset. And so for example, I talk about the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. And the growth mindset, this is just one of the modules, an example, but I see a lot of salespeople, especially, get stuck in the fixed mindset. And the difference is someone with the growth mindset sees abilities as expandable. Like, I'm not good at sales. Well, I can get better at sales with extra practice and role playing and effort and, more, FaceTime with customers and, versus someone with a fixed mindset that goes, I just don't have it. I don't have what it takes. Why am I in sales? I'm never going to get better. I'm not very good at talking to people. I'm not very good at, selling to people or selling my product. I'm just, this just isn't cut out for me. The person with the growth mindset, they believe that with enough effort, they can, increase their skill level, and they do. So a person with the growth mindset versus a fixed mindset start off maybe on the same skill sets, like the athletes we were referring to, but the one with the growth mindset is going to be far more successful. And I talk about other things like that same person with the growth mindset. One of the reasons that they are more successful than a person with a fixed mindset is because they focus on the things that they can control and not what's outside of their control. And that was personal to me because I saw myself as, we had product back orders. We had recalls. You don't have a product to sell. How are you going to make any money? Why would I, in my mind, I went, why should I even go to work today? I can't sell. I don't have a product to sell. We're in a back order. Well, that was a fixed mindset. Someone with a growth mindset said, well, you know what can I control? I can't control the fact that I don't have products, but I can take this time to set up presentations and lunches and practice my presentation skills. I can go out and cold call so that I have more customers, so that when I do have a product, I have all these people that are going to want it. And so, those are, it's just, that's one example that I talk about, and I kind of provide tools on how to get out of the fixed mindset and into the growth mindset. The fixed mindset and the whole course, basically the theme is how will we as salespeople put limits on ourselves? And we kind of, when we put limits on ourselves, then we're stagnant and we're idle, and we always want to be moving towards success, want to be moving forward. And when we put limits on ourselves, like the fixed mindset, we're not moving towards success. We're staying put. So I provide tools to get you out of those limits and, on a forward trajectory so that you can have that long lasting success.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it really is, people used to say like, oh, who is someone who stopped you along your way? And I was like, really, the barriers were just me. I mean, they really were. Like, I can't go and say like, this person stopped me from being successful. And it really wasn't the case. And I played sports for a long time and I coach as well. And mindset, especially in our youth, right? It's a difficult thing to train. Especially today, I feel like we're, everyone gets a trophy. And so, you've got to kind of go through those ups and downs and struggles to really build your mindset and your character, right? Like nothing gives you a little perspective more than an actual, loss, right?
Absolutely.
Of like, right. Like, how do I deal with that loss? How do I come back? I mean, COVID was a really good example of us having to adjust our mindsets, be innovative, change the way we look at things. COVID messed with a lot of people, right? And a lot of businesses. And I myself even got caught up in that for a little bit of like, how do I change things around? Like, what do I do with my business? Like, and so I really had to change my mindset there. And so I really think what you're doing is powerful. Obviously in sales as well. Sales has a lot of ups and downs. It's super intense. It's pressured. And I think it takes a very unique person who can handle that pressure to do it. So I think that's really important. I'm really excited for your class to come out and your books coming out soon as well. Now we're getting closer to the end of our podcast. Before we go though, I wanted to ask you one question. I love to ask everyone this question. One is, if you could go back to your younger self and give your younger self advice, what would you tell yourself?
It's so funny. I would say, listen to that inner voice, because my inner voice has always said, go on your own, be an entrepreneur. I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit, but I've always had the negative self-talk saying you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you can't do it until now. But I also, on the flip side, I feel like I had to go through what I went through to get to where I am now. So I guess I would just say, girl, everything's going to work out fine.
Yep. I love it. I love it. Trust your gut. Every time I don't trust my gut or my intuition, I'm like, Julie, you know better.
I know, it's so true. It's so strong. It's never going to fail you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we're getting to the end here, for some of our people who might be driving, what is the best way if they are interested in your class, your book, or even having you come in person to talk or train or inspire them? What's the best way for them to find you?
CourtneyMartinMindset.com.
Perfect. And that's where we can find links to the book, links to the course, all of that stuff.
Yep. So, you'll find all my social links, Courtney Martin Mindset, on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. And yeah, book and my courses, everything I have going on will be on that website. So come, even if you don't buy anything, just come and say hi. And I'd love to hear from everyone.
Absolutely. Networking is the most powerful thing.
Yeah.
So you don't always have to buy something to network someone. I tell people all the time, message me. I'd love to just be connected with you. And especially as women, I feel like our networking is so powerful because the power of a referral from, everyone, like, right. When our moms are like, what's the best diaper? Like, who's the best, whatever. Right. And so I always trust when I hear things from like, hey, I know this person, they're great, I love them, and I use them, which I can say that about you. And so for those of you listening, if you're driving right now, don't worry, the links and everything will be in there. Of course, you can always message me to get a direct connect to Courtney as well. Check out her upcoming book as well as her class. And we will do a follow-up, probably, let's say we're going to have to do a follow-up in like 6 months and see where you're at, because you're right in this perfect kind of transition phase of your life. And I'd love for our listeners to see how that looks 6 months from now or 8 months from now. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. And as I always
thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And as I always say, live, love, laugh, and always be your authentic self.
Thanks for listening to Lead and Empower Her with your host, Dr. Julie Ducharme. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we'll see you on the next episode.